Have you ever had this strange feeling that you're living someone else's life? Not literally. You wake up, you go to work, you talk to people, you meet expectations, you do everything you're supposed to do, and yet something feels off. It's difficult to explain. From the outside, your life may look perfectly fine. Maybe you have a stable job. Maybe you have friends. Maybe you have goals. Maybe you've achieved things that your younger self would have dreamed of. Yet despite all of it, there's a quiet voice inside you asking a terrifying question. Is this really who I am? Many people spend years trying to silence that voice. Some bury it beneath endless distractions. Others chase success, believing that one more achievement will finally make them feel complete. Some lose themselves in relationships. Others lose themselves in work. But no matter what they do, the feeling returns. A persistent sense of emptiness. A feeling of being disconnected from themselves. A feeling of being lost. Carl Jung believed this feeling wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a sign that something had gone wrong. In fact, he believed it was one of the most important experiences a human being could have. Because according to Jung, feeling lost may actually be the first sign that your real life is trying to begin. And the reason for that lies in a process he called individuation. To understand why you feel lost, we have to go back. Back to childhood. When you're born, you're not concerned with fitting in. You simply are. You laugh when something is funny. You cry when you're sad. You express yourself naturally. But as you grow up, something changes. You learn that certain parts of you are accepted, and certain parts are not. You're rewarded for some behaviors, punished for others, praised for being this, criticized for being that. Slowly, without realizing it, you begin constructing a version of yourself designed to gain approval. Jung called this the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to function in society. It's the version of ourselves we present to the world. And make no mistake, the persona is necessary. Without it, social life would be impossible. The problem begins when we mistake the mask for who we truly are. Because over time, many people become so identified with their persona that they completely lose touch with their authentic self. And that's where the feeling of being lost begins. Not because you don't know who you are, but because you've spent years becoming someone. This is why success often fails to bring fulfillment. Many people assume they feel lost because they haven't achieved enough. So they chase harder, a better career, more money, more recognition, more status. But here's the paradox. You can spend your entire life climbing a ladder, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. Jung saw this happen constantly. People would achieve everything society told them to pursue, and then suddenly find themselves in crisis. A crisis that often appeared in midlife. They would ask, why am I unhappy? Why do I feel empty? Why doesn't any of this satisfy me? The answer wasn't that they needed more. The answer was that they had neglected something essential. The self. Jung believed that every human being contains an unconscious side, a vast hidden world beneath awareness. And most of us know almost nothing about it. Imagine living in a mansion with 100 rooms. Yet spending your entire life in only 3 of them. That's how most people live psychologically. They know only a fraction of themselves. The rest remains hidden. And what's hidden doesn't disappear. It waits. It influences your choices, your relationships, your fears, your desires, your dreams, without your awareness. This is why people often repeat the same mistakes over and over. They think they're choosing freely, but they're actually being driven by forces they don't understand. Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate." Think about that. How many things have you blamed on fate that may actually be coming from parts of yourself you've never explored? Have you ever noticed how some people seem trapped in the same story? Different city, different job, different relationship, same outcome. The details change. The pattern remains. Jung believed this happens because the unconscious keeps trying to get our attention. If we refuse to learn a lesson, life repeats it again and again and again, not because the universe is punishing us, but because something inside us remains unresolved. Life becomes a mirror, reflecting back the parts of ourselves we refuse to see, until eventually the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. That's often when people begin their journey of individuation, not because they want to, but because they can no longer avoid it. At the heart of Jung's psychology lies one of his most famous ideas, the shadow. The shadow contains all the parts of ourselves we've rejected. Our fears, our insecurities, our anger, our selfishness, our envy, but also our creativity, our courage, our ambition, our power. Many people think the shadow only contains negative qualities. Jung disagreed. He believed we hide both our darkness and our light. Sometimes people suppress their anger because they're afraid of being disliked. Other times they suppress their greatness because they're afraid of standing out. Both become part of the shadow. And here's the problem. Whatever you reject gains power over you. The qualities you refuse to acknowledge don't disappear. They operate from the unconscious, influencing your life from behind the scenes. This is why individuation requires courage, because it means facing everything you've spent years avoiding. Most people assume the goal of life is happiness. Jung had a different view. He believed the goal of life was wholeness, not perfection. Wholeness. There's a huge difference. Perfection says, become flawless. Wholeness says, become yourself. And becoming yourself is far more difficult because it requires honesty. It requires admitting that parts of you exist that you'd rather not acknowledge. It requires accepting contradictions, strength and weakness, confidence and fear, light and darkness. The individuated person doesn't eliminate these opposites. They integrate them. They become whole. Today's world is designed to keep you distracted. Social media tells you who to be. Advertising tells you what to want. Algorithms tell you what to think. Everywhere you look, there are voices competing for your attention. But individuation requires the opposite: silence, reflection, solitude. This is one reason so many people feel disconnected. They know everything about celebrities, everything about politics, everything about strangers online, but almost nothing about themselves. And without self-knowledge, life begins to feel empty. Because no matter how much information you consume, it can never replace wisdom. And wisdom begins within. Here's something surprising. Jung believed periods of confusion can be valuable, even necessary. Many people think feeling lost means they're failing. Jung would argue the opposite. Feeling lost often means your old identity is dying. And that's painful because the ego loves certainty. It wants clear answers, clear directions, clear labels. But growth rarely works that way. Before a new self can emerge, the old one must crumble. Before transformation comes disorientation. Before clarity comes confusion. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by improving itself. It dissolves completely. And perhaps that's where you are now. Not broken, not failing, simply transforming. The solution to feeling lost is not found by running faster. It's found by going deeper. Jung spent his life encouraging people to explore their inner world, their dreams, their emotions, their fears, their fantasies, their symbols, their unconscious patterns, because the answers we seek externally often originate internally. The journey inward isn't easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things a person can do, because eventually you'll encounter yourself, the real self, not the mask, not the performance, not the identity you've built for others, but the person underneath it all. And that meeting changes everything. As individuation progresses, something remarkable happens. Life becomes less about proving and more about being. You stop needing constant validation. You stop comparing yourself to everyone else. You stop chasing goals that aren't truly yours. You begin making choices aligned with your deeper nature. And with that comes a strange sense of peace. Not because life becomes easier, but because it becomes authentic. For the first time, you're no longer living according to someone else's script. You're writing your own. Maybe the reason you feel lost isn't because you've failed. Maybe it's because you've reached the edge of an old identity. Maybe the life you've built no longer fits the person you're becoming. Maybe that restlessness, that dissatisfaction, that longing for something more isn't a curse. Maybe it's a compass, pointing you back toward yourself. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who society wants you to be, not who your fears tell you to be, not who your past says you must remain, but who you truly are." And perhaps that's the hidden reason you feel lost. Because deep down, something inside you knows that the journey isn't over. It's only beginning. The path forward isn't about finding yourself. It's about removing everything that isn't you. And when you finally do, you may discover that the person you've been searching for your entire life has been waiting inside you all along.